Cash-strapped state agencies are facing another budget cut as Oklahoma experiences yet another revenue failure. While the cuts will be spread among all state agencies that receive appropriations, the budget axe will fall the hardest on the Department of Education and Oklahoma's public schools.
While there have been signs Oklahoma is lifting out of an economic recession, the news coming out of Tuesday's Board of Equalization meeting was still grim. Secretary of Finance Preston Dorflinger called the situation dire as he told the board the state will have about $878 million less to spend next fiscal year. Meanwhile, lagging collections to the state's general revenue fund will force the state to make cuts to all appropriated state agencies beginning next month.
I need you members, make that, I beg you to have an appreciation for the seriousness of the situation that we have before us. It's not a game. We need new revenue.
The revenue failure means state agencies will lose $34.6 million for the rest of the current fiscal year. That figure includes $11.1 million in cuts to public schools. Projections also show a more than $39 million shortfall to the 1017 fund, which goes to help fund common education. Governor Mary Fallin says it all adds up to another tough year for Oklahoma's public school system.
We know that the lottery funds are not coming in the way we thought they were. We know that the 1017 funds are coming in under budget. We know that we just taken another 1% per se cut to education. So you add those three things, lottery funds being down 1017 and just a general appropriations cut to education, that's going to be somewhere around 50 million or so more cuts to education.
The cuts were a major topic at this week's regularly scheduled meeting of the State Board of Education.
Our goal is to protect students as much as possible. But when core services overall, collectively, are cut, there is a collective impact to the children in our communities, in our classrooms, and individually. And they have been cut to the bone. At this point, we are leaching calcium from the bone.
State School Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister says Oklahoma Public Schools have already lost more than $18 million in the first 2 months of this year as a result of shortfalls in the 1017 fund.
So there has not been enough revenue to meet the expected projection that all school budgets were based on. So that is going to require a readjustment.
Matt Holder, the Chief Operations Officer for the Department of Education, says the agency will roll the shortfall in the 1017 fund into the state aid formula for schools.
This is not going to completely fix our cash flow issue that we've been having in sending money out to the districts. It will help a lot in the sense that it will be a much more equitable distribution of that money, but we do expect there to be some other shortfalls in our cash flow throughout the rest of this year.
Meanwhile, revenues from other sources, such as the Common Education Technology Fund, are also falling short, forcing still more painful adjustments.
The projections show a possible $7 million shortfall at the end of the year. That is on top of the 0.2 million in the 1017 fund, and on top of the 11.1 million in cuts due to the general revenue failure thus far. If there were to be additional revenue failure or shortfalls, then there will be additional needs to cut.
Oklahoma Education Association President Alicia Priest says the cuts pose a hardship for schools, which have already budgeted for the rest of the school year.
They'll be dipping down into their reserve funds, which are there to help in emergency purposes and to start the next school year. And that means that next school year, we won't be able to hire as many teachers. So our class sizes will go up.
The impact of the revenue failure and the looming $878 million budget shortfall prompted Governor Fallin to renew calls to legislators to adopt her budget plan, which includes extending the sales tax to 164 services which are currently exempt.
We have to fix our structural deficits in our budget. We can't keep moving money from one place to the other, playing what I would call a smoke and mirrors game, acting like we had revenue when we didn't, and using one-time funds.
Fallin's plan also includes an increase in the cigarette tax, something she accused Democrats of blocking last year. She says if Democrats have a plan for solving the state's budget crisis, she wants to see it.
Any proposals they can get passed in the House and Senate, I'll look at. But they're going to have to step up to the table and not lock up as a group and demagogue and criticize the Republicans who are in control without providing solutions and being a part of the solution versus just blocking everything.
House Minority Leader Scott Inman countered that the revenue failures are self-inflicted, brought on by cuts in the income tax and generous tax credits for the oil and gas industry.
We said we absolutely will get behind the cigarette tax if you'll get behind the solutions to the real problems that face us, which is restoring the income tax cuts, rolling back the gross production tax cuts, and rolling back tax credits and exemptions.
And while the governor called on lawmakers to work with her, she also held out a threat if legislators are unwilling to consider new revenues to fill the state's budget hole.
If our legislature isn't willing to solve some of these problems and prioritize our services, invest in some of our services, there may just come a time at the end of session where I just veto the appropriations until we get a deal worked that works for the state of Oklahoma.